This episode of The Unstarving Musician is sponsored by Liner Notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for Liner Notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes featuring yours truly. A glimpse into the minds of my varied guests, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode and to the final stretch of 2023. The holiday season is upon us. Man, crazy, right? There are many who are less fortunate than you and I. Let's wish them well and be kind to others, kinder than we need to be, kinder than we think we need to be, and let's be kind to ourselves during this season. If you're not feeling fortunate, I wish the best for you too. You are making a worthy dent in the universe, my friends. What are you doing? What are you wearing? Right? Nobody ever responds to that, but I'm waiting. Somebody's going to. I hope it's you, dear listener. My guest for this episode is Johnny Burgin. So you heard him recently in a Rewind episode, if you're a loyal listener. That's a couple of episodes back. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It's a great episode, a pretty early one in the podcast series. Well, he was here in my home for this conversation we're about to have here. A little housekeeping before we get to Johnny. I'm on a holiday schedule, in case you're not a loyal listener and don't already know this, until the second week of January. So you'll get a couple of episodes, I should say an episode every other week until the second week of January. Then we'll be back on that weekly thing that we do here. I have video and audio performance from San Miguel de Allende here performing with Johnny Burgin. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. There are a couple of videos floating around, one of which I'm going to actually be able to edit. Another one that's been edited. It's a long form, like full show thing. I'm going to see if I can get those chopped into songs. And there's also some audio you can check out on SoundCloud. I will find a link for that and have it in the show notes for you. I was on a podcast somewhat recently. I did an interview somewhat recently, but the episode just dropped very recently. It's a podcast called Set Listing for Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen fan podcast hosted by Jesse Jackson. Now, I'm not the biggest of Bruce Springsteen fans, although I do think he's amazing, and I have seen him perform, and I've even owned some of his music. But I was invited. There was actually like a call for guests on LinkedIn of all places, and I responded, and the host was happy to have me on. So we did talk about Bruce Springsteen, a couple of the shows of his I attended in my youth, and the music of my youth, as well as the Rolling Stones, and of course the Unstarving Musician. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. You should check it out. I haven't finished listening to it, but this is pretty cool. He is a really nice guy. He lives near Arlington, where I grew up most of my life. And at the time we spoke, he was excited because those Texas Rangers, the Major League Baseball team, were they were a couple of games away from going to the World Series, which they did do, and they won. That was cool. I haven't talked to him since then. I need to. By the way, the Unstarving Musician needs your support. Please, if you love what I do here, go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. I added some new ways to support. They don't all cost money, by the way. Some of them just a few minutes of your time, but there are some monetary contributions you can make. Services maybe you already need that you're thinking about buying, you can buy that would help us out. And there's a newish tip jar. Click and tip, and that's it. It's easy. Anyway, there are a lot of ways to offer your support, and we really appreciate it. Your support equals love. So thank you. So yes, Johnny Burgin. He's been making waves in the U.S. and abroad as a blues player, entrenched in the Chicago blues style. He's performed and recorded with blues legends like Tail Dragger, Sam Lay, Billy Boy Arnold, and Pinetop Perkins. He made a name for himself in the late 90s in Chicagoland blues clubs and a record deal with Delmark and several European tours. He plays on average more than 200 shows a year, probably closer to 250, which is why he has such an appreciation for the stage, audiences, and other blues players. So yes, I performed with him in and around Queretaro, and that was all revolving around the Queretablues Festival, which was one of the performances we did. That was really fun. This week I received a message from him, Johnny, to ask what I thought about doing some shows with him in Mexico City. So to be continued. I think he's ready to come back already. That'll be great. We recorded this conversation at the end of a busy 10 days while he was here in Queretaro, and we were enjoying some cervezas Bohemia. So you might hear me get a little out of line. Not so much, but you can tell I'm enjoying myself. We later went out for some local cuisine, and the poor guy woke up not feeling a little well, but it wasn't what you would expect. I think he was just experiencing a little bit of exhaustion, maybe still acclimating to our altitude. I'm not sure, but I believe he made it home feeling great, and I think he's a new homeowner in Memphis. I need to find out if that all went through just fine. I'm sure it did. It was looking great when he left. He was working on it while he was here. That's got to be stressful. He's a lot of fun. He's still showing me the ropes of the Chicago blues niche, which is in part an exercise in restraint from my improvisational ways, but it's also an education in nuance. So we talk about Queretaro, Mexico, the Queretablues Festival, his guitar masterclass that he did here, his YouTube channel, moving to Memphis, leaving Chicago, a forthcoming album he's contemplating, threatening to do, and more. All right, here is me talking with Johnny Burgin. Okay, this is take 3 because I'm recording in person, which I almost never do. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, Roberto.
Thanks for saying that. I know you are. You said earlier today you've had a great day. So I'm with Johnny Burgin. He's a unique outlier. He's a Gen Xer that honors the tradition of Chicago blues. He's been here with me for about a week. And so today he was telling me he's had a wonderful day. I think that means it was relaxing, not too much go, right?
Yeah, because I'm generally on the road over 200 nights a year nowadays. So to have a little peace and quiet and some good food and some stillness here and there is a nice thing.
So we've been trying for about 45 minutes or more to do this because the power's been going out in Queretaro. So yeah, anyway, we lucked out. It finally came back on again. We'll see if we get through this. But a moment ago, before we had to start over, because I'm not used to doing in-person interviews, I was asking you about your thoughts on the Queretablues Festival. Can you do that one again?
Sure. This kind of music, there's just little mesmerized clusters all over the world. And we've got a great one down here. It was a real privilege for me to come here. I'm the first American artist that they've had, and this was their 9th year doing the festival. But it was great for me to see all these very solid and sometimes really excellent Mexican blues bands. It's always eye-opening to see the others' perspectives on things. And I think, it's been a long time theme of mine to sort of let's make the tent a little bigger.
Yeah, nice. I love that about the whole blues community. And what's your take on the pickup guys that you got? Not including me, because this is my second rodeo with you. And you can be honest. They might listen, but I know you won't be harsh. Okay, but you can be if you need to be.
Well, I make it work with pickup musicians all over the place. And we had a wonderful young bass player. He did a real good job. And I understand they're coming from a real different perspective, and it's not the most natural reaction. I mean, blues has permeated all kinds of American music, and most people can sort of get through it rhythm-wise and everything. But they've got a further way to go. I mean, I use pickup bands in Japan. I just came back from a month-long tour of Japan, and so same situation, but I really enjoy it, and I can make it work, and they were great, and it was just a love fest.
Yeah, and even speaking for myself, I've actually been working at this, not necessarily working on your material or specifically working on Chicago blues. However, I have really gained a lot of appreciation for Chicago blues since we first met back in since we first played together back in 2020. And it's a lot different. I think the low-hanging fruit for most of us that play any sort of pop or rock, when we think of blues, it's this rock blues thing. And so I was laughing at myself as we were doing one of our first gigs that I had this involuntary thing that would take place where I wanted to do some kind of fills that were just like rock or funk that were completely out of place, but it was like I wasn't even thinking, it just happened, and then I'm like, oh yeah, don't do that.
Right. A lot of it is really unlearning to come to a style with fresh eyes.
For sure, man. And it's one of the guys that we were in the pickup band with us or with you, lives here in Queretaro. He had told me that he felt like he got his own private masterclass, and he was referring to the masterclass that you did for the Queretablues Festival, which I was fortunate enough to attend for a while, even though I'm not much of a guitar player. But it was super interesting for me to attend that because even as a drummer, man, you were sort of speaking the same language for a drummer who's trying to learn this too. And I saw you had maybe like 10 or 8 guitar players there or more, maybe that seemed to be really getting into it. And I know there was a little bit of language barrier, not a ton, but a little bit. How did you feel doing that master class on the final day, the morning of the final day of the festival?
Well, I had no idea what to expect, but once they sat down and came in there and we started playing, everything was great. I was doing a song called Jimmy Rogers, You're the One. It's real pretty. It's an E, and it's accessible for more beginner side guitar players, but also has some nice sophisticated things in there. So I feel really good about it. I've been teaching a lot more since the last time we talked.
Yes, one comment or observation I made at the master class was you had a couple of guys who were pretty accomplished players, but you were showing them something, the details of something that was still somewhat new to them, and that was kind of neat to watch. And I even had some guitar players come up to me for the little bit of time that you've spent with me, sort of talking to me about the teaching me the ropes, for lack of better words, with the whole Chicago blues feel. They had noticed a big difference, or they commented they noticed a big difference in the way I was approaching it versus what they hear from the local drummers, which is the thing that I used to do a lot of, and that is just like, okay, I'm going to default to this low-hanging fruit of doing this sort of rock thing. I know that fits in here. Might not really be what's supposed to be happening, but it kind of fits. You have a YouTube channel that seems to be taking off. You've been doing lessons on there, and you've been just posting. Well, you've been posting lessons, and then you have private lessons. And what was interesting to me, because I had an opportunity to participate in one of the ones that you post for the channel, you had me play a little cajon, which you thought would be fun. You said you love having guests. But then you did, the same day, I guess later the same afternoon here in my studio, you did a private lesson. And I learned before, during, and after, because I was in the studio when you were doing that, just sort of listening in casually, that the two, especially with this particular student, that the two things were very tied together. Can you talk about, you and I talked about this earlier today, about how the things that you post, the lessons you post that are sort of for everybody for the most part, versus the sort of insider students that are, or student, even if there's one or two, that are getting some of the stuff ahead of the others, and how that's sort of working to help you grow your YouTube channel?
Sure. Well, I started Patreon at the beginning of the year, and Jason Ritchie, who's a great harp player, really inspired me on this because he's really taken off on YouTube and Patreon. So some people, people have come and asked me with requests and stuff for different kinds of videos, because I've made well over 100 now, and I'm religious about posting one every Monday. And so people ask questions, and it's become like a community of people who are into this kind of music. We're all sort of discovering each other, and that feeds into the live shows too. People will come up to me and say, I love your videos. I drove 2 hours to see your show. And they never would have come otherwise. They never would have even known about it. So it's been a great outreach thing and a community thing. So if somebody requests something, or chooses to sponsor a video, then we just go ahead and do it. And it's been a good help for me, because I still make most of my money from shows, but it's definitely a leg of the stool.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me how it all works, and it's funny because I have a couple of YouTube channels, one for the podcast and then one just sort of as the musician, Rabanzo. And we were talking about something this afternoon, and that was you have this relationship between a private student sponsor in the scenario that I happened to across when you were doing a lesson, and then you have another sponsor or two, I guess. But it became clear to me that you schedule some of these episodes so that there's not a paywall, but sort of like there's some guys or a guy who get to see this before everyone else because they wanted to see this, and then it's going to get scheduled God. So you were sort of schooling me a little bit on the premiere function, which I see. I was telling you that, man, I see that all the time, and I don't care. I don't know. But you were telling me that, that's like it's really a cool thing because your subscribers get an advance notification. Johnny's got a video coming out on Monday. And so I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And I'm sure there's some other little cool things about it. But how did you maybe it was just like self-taught, which most of us are, but were there any tips that you got or did you just dive into the YouTube school, literally the creator school, to learn about how to do little things like that?
I was really inspired by Jason Ritchie. What he's accomplished is incredible, and I've only done like a fraction of that, but it's kind of a different animal. And also the Chicago Blues Camp that I was working for the last few years, lately they've that man who ran it, good friend of mine, has sort of stepped back from doing it, so I've been doing it. But he was really working on that too, so he was another sort of a mentor. So it's just been kind of an organic thing. I mean, it started out with nothing. I thought I would never be able to monetize my YouTube because it was just going so slow, and it just kept, with consistency and like gradually fine-tuning my videos. I often make them too long. I need to make them shorter. It's all about bullet points. And once I had a famous trial lawyer who has actually, I've done some house concerts for him, and he teaches other lawyers. He was actually a district attorney, and he teaches other trial lawyers. And I taught him a guitar lesson. He's like, man, people can only remember 3 things. He talks to juries, and he gets paid giant money, and he's like, come on, don't talk about more than 3 things. But sometimes I do, because I get all fired up about it, and I'm sort of rediscovering it or fine-tuning it myself. And so I've learned about the presentation, and it has grown. So it's really... it's been really a rewarding thing. And also, maybe I'm getting ahead of you, but it's really improved my playing because I'm constantly putting my own feet to the fire, because these lessons are not about what I do. It's about what happened. It's like history.
Yeah. A mutual friend of ours had commented to me that your playing, she observed, has gotten even better since you started doing the lessons. So I totally buy into what you just said. And earlier, you're talking about how important it's been to you to be, very strict on yourself about doing it every Monday. And I was thinking just now as you said that one of the first things that you said when you got here was, okay, I got a lesson video I got to do, or I have one in the can and I got to do this other one, or maybe I can do this other one to kind of get ahead. And I was like, okay, this is pretty serious. So it was kind of nice to be here for that. But I did ask you later this afternoon, because I have been doing this email for subscribers of the Unstarving Musician, email subscribers, to try and share the knowledge gems that I garner from all the people that come on the podcast. And sometimes things that I've just learned myself, often things I've learned myself. And, I wanted to do it every week, but I've just been kind of doing it as I can. And sometimes I'm gone like 3, 4, 5 weeks. And then, so I have a bi-weekly call with a friend. It's sort of a mastermind thing, just 2 of us though. And I told her recently that I need, I'm going to start doing liner notes, I call it now, the subscriber email about the knowledge gems. I'm going to do it every Tuesday. Every Tuesday. No,
right
sorry.
on.
Every other Tuesday, I said. So that was like, I'm going to commit to every other Tuesday. And I've already slipped once, and that was only like 4 or 5 Tuesdays ago. So
keep coming back.
I know. Keep coming back. So it made me want to ask, just because I wanted to get inside your head about how you motivate yourself. And I did just literally ask, what motivates you to do it every Monday?
I've been seeing the positive results, either with enhancing my repertoire and with the reaction of people. When I run into people who I didn't know who have come to the shows, that's a big one for me. And so I want to keep building it. I mean, it's definitely paid off. So, and I get, you get tips and stuff. I mean, it's not enough to, it's not really about the money, but I just wouldn't want to. Habits are a lot easier to establish. What am I saying? Habits are they're hard to establish and easy to break. And so I've established this habit and it's rolling. So I really don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, you're into it. I can tell. It's really cool. I've been curious about something all weekend, and you are known here, and I don't know how it is for you in the States or Japan. Maybe it's a lot the same. But the perception right here is that you're this guy from Chicago. And you kind of are. I mean, that's where you cut your teeth. You not kind of, you are. You, in terms of your blues artistry, you really cut your teeth there some years ago. You had amazing opportunities with artists that people who were into this niche part of the blues genre, I just would trip over themselves to to have been in your shoes.
And they're not possible anymore.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And so the question I've been having, so you're moving to Memphis, and you've been in Norfolk, Virginia for I don't know how long. We don't really need to talk about that, but you can as much as you want. But I was wondering in my own head, like, do you have this sort of like, do you feel like there's this sort of image that you have to uphold that you're this guy from Chicago? Because that's where everyone still sort of perceives that the core or the center of the blues world in the United States is. And you and I were talking earlier this week that it's kind of moved to Memphis, as are you. And I was just wondering how you felt about that when you're talking to people and they're just, and have you been thinking ahead, like, how am I going to deal with this in the future? Or do I just, you've been super good about, like, you just get into the conversation and you never really broach that, but how do you feel about it?
Well, I lived there for 28 years and I had a great time, especially when I was learning and starting out. It's a great place to play the blues and to learn. But eventually I sort of hit a plateau. I had done everything I was going to do. A lot of my friends and mentors had either passed or were inactive, and the stuff that I needed to learn was done. It was time to go. And that's when I moved to California. And that was another huge learning opportunity. And that's how I got to have a relationship with Charlie Musselwhite. He played on my live record, Johnny Burgin Live on the Delmark record label, which is also out of Chicago. And, we had a sort of a partnership with Aki Kumar. He played on a lot of my recordings. I still, think very highly of him. I worked a lot with Kid Anderson, Rick Estrin, great harp player from the Rick Estrin and the Nightcats. Every time I played in Sacramento, he would come and sit in. So I had a lot of great new relationships, stimulating situations. It was just great. And it kind of made me cool again to me, playing with some of these folks. And it was really revitalizing. So, but 28 years is a long time. I mean, I have a Chicago point of view wherever I may hang my hat. So that's good enough. And that there'll always be sort of a badge of honor being from Chicago. And I don't think I have to live there anymore to still have that Chicago point of view.
Was there anything specific that prompted your move to California? I know you said you did everything you could do. Was it literally that, or were there some other factors that were more, specific?
No, I remember exactly what happened. I mean, I was playing these same suburban places around Chicago all the time, and it was just on a local gig treadmill, inviting the same people, doing the same places, playing with the same people, where they're watching TVs and stuff at the bar. And I remember the exact day just inviting people on Facebook going, this is not cutting it. I've got to change it.
Why California?
I was already going out there, and then Aki called me he had a nice gig, and I'm like, I'm just driving there and staying, and that's that's what I did.
That's cool.
I actually drove out there in a Toyota Avalon with all my stuff, and Steve Doherty, who's my main Midwest drummer, because I still tour in the Midwest once or twice a year. He drove with me. I said, man, if you drive with me, I'll book gigs along the way and fly you back. And he did. And, that was the beginning of a great adventure. And then once I got to California, I was playing like most of the gigs that were available to me. But it wasn't quite enough. And I just booked a gig in Rhode Island and said, I got to make it work. So that was my first like solo cross-country tour with pickup bands. And I've been doing that ever since. Although sometimes I have a crew in the Midwest and I have a crew on the East Coast. Well, I have a crew on the West Coast and sort of a crew on the East Coast. So
you got a
it's
crew.
been a great thing.
You got a crew with a Q and an R now.
I got a crew in Mexico, right? I have a manager in Mexico.
That's funny. So when did Japan come in the picture? So you leave Chicago, you establish some roots in California. Was Japan in between or after you moved to California?
Japan's been a thread throughout that whole time. I first went there in 96, but then I didn't go back there till 2014. There was a great bass player who now lives in Chicago, and she was just awesome, and she arranged a tour, and then somebody else arranged a tour, and then now this young fellow, Rice Cake, who I actually met as a little boy back in 96. Now he's a grown man, and he's been helping me with these tours, and that's how we did the record. Stephanie Tice produced it. No Border Blues came out during the pandemic. It's the first American compilation of the underground Japanese blues scene, and I will forever be proud of this unique recording.
That's so cool.
And I think Mexico is I think there's some perfect parallels between Japan and Mexico as far as the blues scene goes. They've both had people like some of the greats come here, and there's still people who remember those shows, and that's what got them fired up, and they started a blues band in their spare time. That's what happened in Japan when Eddie Taylor went to Japan, and Robert Lockwood and Otis Rush. There's people, they're still talking about those shows. And same here, there's those shows in Mexico City. I don't know how many people told me about them, where Coco Taylor came there and Junior Wells and so on. So they've got their own take here, these little small mesmerized clusters, like I like to say.
Yeah, I noticed that it was probably the night we did the festival, or the day we did the festival, that you were drawing a parallel in conversation with me to what you've seen in Japan, and it was kind of exciting for me to think about the locals here, even though I'm a local now, but to think about what they will go through, and actually what you'll go through, hopefully, coming back here and making it part of a regular.
Oh, absolutely!
Sort of
I am beyond fired up about this.
That's nice.
I'm going to bring my Chicago Blues Workshop to Mexico for sure, and
Cool.
wherever else I can bring it.
That's so cool. We've been talking about email a lot this weekend and I know maybe you think I've got it completely dialed in 100%, but sometimes I'm better at doling out advice than I am at implementing. And although I do practice a lot of these things, but it's good for me to tell to try and coach or whatever, tell others, recommend things to others, because I do always take a step back and go, I'm not doing that as well as I should be. But we've talked a lot about email, and in fact, I was kind of fretting over this idea that somehow you weren't getting my liner notes emails, and I saw you're a subscriber, and I'm like, why are you not getting them? And anyway, I figured it out. It's kind of become convoluted, which email marketing can, but has email been a pretty big deal for you? I know that you recognize the importance of it, because every time we talk about it, you're like, I need to do that. But has it been very important for you?
Well, that's one thing I've enjoyed about our friendship, is that we can talk about the business and the how of things. Everybody's in charge of maintaining their own fan base, and email is a real good way to do it. I've been doing it since the 90s, but I need to do it better. So anyway, I'm working on it, but it does. I always get responses back where people appreciate that you wrote them. And I mean, I have a small group of really passionate fans who really care. So, and that's probably what it's going to stay, but I could still make it bigger. So the main thing to me is about keeping those connections going.
That's good. No, that's great. I mean, an engaged list is better than a big list, or a big engaged list is great, but a list can be kind of small, but if it's engaged people, it's great. I have to drop a shout out, I guess, for ConvertKit. It's the service that I use. They did something recently, and I don't know if they're the first to do it, but they created this community within their subscriber base of other creators, and so they basically had us put our profiles into this ecosystem that is all their subscribers, and so we've been exposed to each other, and we can recommend each other and see each other's emails because we make them publicly available. And I was kind of on an uphill swing. I mean, in a good way. I don't know if I should say uphill or downhill, but I guess uphill is the right metaphor. But my subscribers have been on the upswing because I started promoting it on the podcast at the front end and doing some other things. But when ConvertKit did this, I was like, whoa, I'm like getting a lot more subscribers all of a sudden, and they seem to be relatively engaged. So, and that was just to tell anyone who's not yet using an email marketing service.
That sounds great.
That ConvertKit's been really
Sign
good to
up.
me. Yeah. ConvertKit's been good to me, and you can find a link to their free offering on the unstarvingmusician.com's page and this episode. So just a quick note for them. All right, I'm going to just ask some left field things because I think we sort of covered the things that there is one thing I wanted to ask you. So what's next up? So you're going to go home. Felicidades, you just purchased, you're in the process of closing on a home in Memphis, and fingers crossed for you everything works out, because we all know it's not done until the final document is signed and all that stuff, but it sounds like it's going to happen. So you're going to do that. I know that you got to get settled and stuff, but what's next up with music for you?
I need to release my next record. So that's going to happen this year. And I also want to do an instrumental record. I've already got that started. So I've got a record in the can, and then I've got a record where one song is done, and that's like an instrumental surf record. But I want to make it not quite. I love low strike jackets, but I want to make it a little more. I don't want it to be purely a clinical sounding perfect record. I want it to really put some kind of explosive blues in there, but still have it be a surf instrumental rock and roll music. Really, instrumental rock and roll is the better term. So anyway, I'm excited about that. I'm going to keep the teaching. I'm going to do I'm going to do the Chicago Guitar Workshop, and we'll see. It's going to be great. I'm going to come back to Mexico. I'm going to go back to Japan. I'm going to go to Denmark, and that's what I got so far.
That's amazing. And hopefully you and I will reunite in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're talking about something that we can't elaborate on because it's not done or anything, but it's something
top secret.
Yeah, it's something that we want to do. So hopefully we'll be doing that together. You'd made a comment to me that was pretty exciting earlier today, and you just said we need to play together more.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
that was largely, maybe not mostly, but it was largely that you want to get me dialed in on the nuance of the Chicago blues niche.
There's a great blues drummer in you that's just got to get slightly chiseled out. We're going to chisel that out.
That's right, man.
But just a minute ago, I thought of something. The two most important things in my life were going to Chicago and leaving Chicago. They were the most defining events, because when I went to Chicago, that's when I met Tail Dragger. That's who recently passed on September 4th. And I'll miss him every day. And Sam Lay, who passed a couple years back, I think about him often. Those are the people that really turned me into a real musician. And then once I got that training and learning, leaving Chicago sort of opened up the whole world again.
That's so cool. Yeah, and talking about the things that you learned from those guys, I was really enjoying the time that we've spent playing together over the past several days. And we've gotten a handful of videos that friends, family have taken, and I was watching them and watching you play, and it's obviously different to be at the drum kit and hearing it and being part of it, and then to get to watch it. And it's just great, man. I love it. So for anybody who hasn't experienced your music, I'll drop some links to something, even though I'm personally going to edit a montage of things that I can put together from various videos people have taken. But you have a lot of stuff out there on YouTube already. So if you haven't seen him, or even better, like listen to some of your records or buy some of your records, some of your music.
And come to a show, because I'm coming to a town near you, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't experienced Johnny until you've seen him live. I mean, I think my wife says it best. She doesn't even really, I'll tell you something. She's not crazy about the blues, but she loves your music. She thinks you're a great player, and she loves watching you play. She just thinks you're just a great entertainer, and you light up the stage. So,
oh, that is music to my ears. I mean, you can't expect everybody to like blues. Not everybody's going to get it. And I wouldn't even want to live in a world where, like, you go to get gas and they're playing Muddy Waters, because it's kind of for the cool kids. So, not that your wife isn't a cool kid, but it's our own little clique that we love. And it's okay that not everyone, it's okay that it's not the dominant, discourse or whatever, however you want to put it,
Yeah.
So, but to hear somebody like who's sort of not part of the tribe, they get it, they're engaged, they like it because of something I did. What can make me feel better?
Oh yeah, she loves it, and I've seen other people since you got here too that totally are like, wow.
I hate blues, but he was great, right?
And I experienced this last night at our final show in the area, and I think you did too, that we were just reflecting on the different audiences that we experienced, and probably this is my perspective, the Queretablues Festival was like, those folks were there to see Johnny Burgin. They were there to hear blues, and they were intrigued by this whole Chicago blues thing that you do. And they were just so into it at a different level. And before that, we did this super well executed house concert by our now mutual friend, Dean Barber, who is based here in Queretaro. And we had a super intimate listening audience, and they were really into it. And it's not to take anything away from the other audiences that we played for, because they were all amazing, but they were just all unique, don't you think?
It was, and it was a real shot in the arm. It's so great to have people come to it with fresh eyes, and they just want to hear what you do, and then you see them like banging their heads almost. I mean, we had one song, Rock House by Calvin Frazier, and there's people out there banging their heads to a strong, like 50s blues shuffle. I mean, it just, if I had a heart attack on stage and that was it, I would be happy.
I hear you too. It's for me, it was the recording that you gave me to get acquainted with the song. It's like, it's so obscure, but underneath the obscurity, you can hear this amazing performance at this amazing live event that I will never be able to even wrap my head around, because I wasn't there and it happened so long ago. But it's a trip. It's so cool to I could feel it playing it with you, and I know that our friends who were in the band could feel it as well. So it was super cool. And I think it makes sense that you're going to do the instrumental album soon. Cool.
I can't wait. I can't wait to do an instrumental record.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to ask you, we're going to close with some obscure questions. I feel like these are test questions, because I'm always looking for better questions, and these are...
so I'm a guinea pig for your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're not the first, but...
No problem.
Although I think...
What are friends for, man?
Yeah. Although I think that... so I have a large list of these left of Unstarving Musician, field questions, but you'll be the first to hear these and try and answer them. So whatever comes out and whatever you think of when I ask it, sometimes people go like, do you mean this or that? And I'll be like, sure. So anyway, first one is, what's slowing you down the most?
I need help, man. I need, it would be really great if I had an agent, but I don't. And I just have too many things to do. I don't always solicit better and bigger gigs, because I'm driving 8 hours because I got to play in Omaha, and I can only do 2 things at once. So that's What's slowing me down? If there were 3 of me, I would be just killing it, man.
Hence the agent, yeah. That's a good one. Okay, and the next one, when was the last time you did something you've never done before?
Coming here and playing was the first time. I had no idea what to expect. And that was great.
So you feel like it was this past week?
Yeah, and it's been a real shot in the arm. I'm just on a high.
That's cool. Okay, and the last one is, when should you give up? When should one give up?
That's a good question, but I'm totally stumped on that.
It's a tough question. I'm not sure what I'd say.
Here's the thing. I mean, music, you can do music as much or as little as you want. And if nobody likes it, but you still like it, then go ahead on and do it if that's what you want to do. You know, it's not a talent contest. And to me, it's not a sales contest either. There's always someone making more money than you. There's always someone who can play better than you. But are you happy? So if you're not happy, and life isn't always beer and Skittles, right? Nobody likes all.
Or as I like to say, it's not always cupcakes and hand jobs.
Oh, okay. You said it. I wasn't going to. Anyway. So, you know, sometimes the business will really get people down. It really will, because there's just a lot of rejection. There's a lot to do. Not everyone has the sort of soft skills, the sales skills. You know, I quit music for about 8 years. And at one point I was the manager of a pool supply store, and the dude taught me how to sell stuff. And that was helpful. That was very helpful.
I bet.
And not everybody, you know, has the quote unquote benefit of that, because I wouldn't say that was definitely not a career thing for me, but not everybody can handle that. They just can't. And sometimes they can really get down on themselves, but I don't know if that means they should quit. It just means everyone needs to learn, like, what is a realistic expectation for them? So for me, I'm on kind of a cool cruising altitude. I have a network of people around, like all around the world that help me out, that help me keep going. And it's been sustainable for a long time, and maybe not to everyone's definition, but for me, it's been sustainable. So, like, quitting is the furthest thing from my mind, but everyone does need to protect themselves from these downsides that I've been describing.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of stuff in there to think about, and I guess
I really like that question.
Yeah, it is good. I realized when we had the long pause there that I haven't stopped to answer the question myself. I was like, oh, this is a great question. And I didn't make that one up, by the way. Anyone who thinks I'm so creative, but it does remind me that over the past few weeks, and you've been caught in this for me, part of what I was calling a whirlwind earlier in the week, that if we're not stretching to the point where we're uncomfortable and nervous, we're probably not moving forward. So, and I actually heard someone put it this way: when you feel like you're kind of out of control and you don't know what you're doing, they were saying that's exactly how it's supposed to be when you're moving forward, because you're about to accomplish something you've never done before, or potentially something great. And I felt like had an opportunity to do I feel like I've had an opportunity to do some things I haven't done before. So, yeah, I guess I owe you a little gratitude, because somehow you came into the into the vortex of that. So, all right. So for those of you listening, you can find all things Johnny Burgin at johnnyburgin.com, and there will be a link in the show notes and links to some other cool stuff. Johnny, thanks for making time for this, and it's been really amazing to have you here in Queretaro and in my home.
It's been wonderful, Roberto, and I have one more small thing to add. I think I got this from a Chinese fortune cookie, but this is a great piece of advice, which is just, don't think about it, just do it. Like the instrumental record, I've been talking about this forever. It's time to just sit down and write it. So just do it and let the chips fall where they may, right?
Yeah. It's on. It's going to be on record now, so you got to do it.
Yep.
All right, cool, man. Thanks again. This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. If you feel you need a little help with that podcast you're contemplating, Podcast Startup may be just the thing for you. Podcast Startup is a program designed for new podcasters. Did you know that most podcasts don't make it past their first few episodes? That's right. They start, they stall, and then they die. Sustaining a podcast ain't easy. It's commitment. A lack of planning and misaligned expectations are a recipe for fast burnout and fade out for podcasters. This is exactly the kind of thing that Podcast Startup was designed to help you with. If you're intrigued, if you want to start a podcast the right way, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup to learn more and to receive free podcast startup tips from yours truly. Thank you for listening. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. Your support does indeed equal love. The series music you heard in this episode is New Gods Part 2 by yours truly. Find links for all the places to hear the full version with vocals by yours truly at rabonzo.com. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle has amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, tickets, and more, plus tools that can capture detailed fan data for you. Try it at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. Find links for all the people and things talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Peace, love, and a whole lot of gratitude.